Hey guys, what's up? So we have already dealt with the part 1.1 of disaster management. So this will be the part 1.2 of disaster management, and this is presented by me. This is the YouTube channel Unacademy. If you have any doubt, like always, you can ask on the Facebook page below the comment section. If you have any particular request or if you want me to make a particular video, you can let me know below the YouTube or on the Facebook post. Please spread the word of this education revolution as much as you can. So help those who cannot afford coaching. That is my humble request to you, because unlike you, or you might be one of them who might be benefited from it. So just as the only thing which I ask you from is spread the word. So anyway, we will deal with this. This is called as the primary climatic events. So these are the events which occur as a result of global warming or climate change and etc., because of all those bad things happening to earth because of the anthropological changes. So abhi there was a request from most of them that the last video was explained in Hindi a lot, so I'll try to include more of English. But if you want me to speak a Hindi in bit, let me know below the comment section, because यार मज़ा तो हिंदी में ही आता है. Anyway, so increasing the range of temperature variation, there is a phenomenon of this where there is the hot as well as cold, both temperatures increase. So these are called as cold waves and hot waves. तो जब कोल्ड आएगी तो वो माइनस में चला जाएगा, हॉट आएगा तो दे विल गो इन 40s and early 50s also in certain parts of the world. Then there are fog, then there are snowstorms, avalanches. Avalanches are when the snow and the ice rolls down the mountain and it results into a something called as snow slides. Just like you have mudslides. Then you have hailstorm, ओले सुने होंगे हिंदी में. Then you have thunderstorms, and then you have dust storms. Then you have tropical cyclone, lots of them hitting, especially Bangladesh and India, West Bengal, Odisha, etc. Then heavy rain leading to floods, and we have then droughts. Then droughts can be classified into hydrological drought, meteorological drought, and agricultural drought, and I'll be dealing with in geography sometime later. Then you have secondary events. These events follow after the primary climatic events have happened. So they can include crop plantation failure or harvest failure, which can lead to famines. Okay. Then there is a spreading of disease, epidemics, etc., which can, both these combined together can lead to hunger and malnutrition. Then you have water scarcity. There is a shortage of water both in urban areas as well as in rural areas. And then you have landslides हो जाएंगी, saline water intrusion हो जाएगा, mud flows, etc. So these are the some differences between primary events and secondary events. You should have them at the back of your head. So ये कुछ ऐसी pictures हैं. This is taken from NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority. So as you can see, there is huge drought in this area and absolutely nothing can grow in this area for some time, and there is acute water shortage and kid is running to fill. This is a very drastic and dire situation. You cannot even imagine, you cannot even begin to fathom what it feels like to starve literally to death, and there is no water to drink also. Then what is the impact of disaster, especially on the poor and vulnerable communities? It can be a question on its own, as well as it can be given in form of other, like an essay. You can write this as a header. Obviously the poor section of the society, like in most of the conditions, is the worst affected, especially also in case of disaster as well. But in most other conditions, कोई epidemic कुछ भी आएगा तो poor communities will be the worst affected. Even people who are relatively well off, I'm using the term relatively, which lies in the lower middle class or lower class, they face a risk of migrating into the poor category after this disaster strikes. And again, poverty and risk to disasters, they are inextricably linked and they are mutually reinforcing. Bade bade shabd hai, you can use them in essay and get good marks. Inextricably linked means if you are poor, then you are more prone to disaster being incapacitating you or doing you a lot of damage. And if you are struck by disaster, you have more chances of becoming poor. So poor will lead to more impact of disaster, and impact of disaster will make you more poor. So this cycle will continue. Now, what do you mean by vulnerability? I have used the term vulnerability. So कोई भी word use करो तो you should know the definition of that word. So vulnerability is a set of existing conditions that already exist, that is not independent of disaster. It already exists, and it composed of physical, like infrastructure is not there, building is not there, there is a vulnerable building, etc. Then socio-economic, you belong to a lower community, or you have less of the resources to tackle with it, or you have, because of the political factor, because of political instability, example in Eastern Africa, some countries. that adversely affect the ability to respond to disaster. So any absolutely any existing condition, existing, again I'm telling you, it is independent of disaster, it happens before a disaster, that decreases or adversely affects your ability to respond to disaster is vulnerability. So poverty is a vulnerability to being disaster, and the following factors will add to the vulnerability, which I'll be dealing with now. So example will include dwellings in unsafe land, as I've already told you. Why will you dwell in unsafe land to begin with? Either you don't have money to buy it because of the lack of resources, or because you lack employment opportunities. So either of this or because of that. So either you are already poor and you cannot pay, or you have unemployed. So you have very poor dwellings or unsafe shelters, which can fall off any time even without disaster striking. Secondly, the compulsion of poor people to exploit environmental resources. They have to cut wood, they have to shovel coals, and all those bad environmental habits. They are compelled just for their mere survival, and it increases the risk as well as the exposure of the society to disaster. Is that absolutely understood? The entire society is at risk because it is not fault of poor people, because they are compelled to live that way. And rehabilitation response, obviously it will take time to reach these dwellings, as they are not on the priority list, and it makes them the easy target. Is that absolutely understood? For various hazards. So let's move on for we continue. So this is something called as, this is very important statement, most disasters are man-made. Is that absolutely understood? Nature only produces crisis. Obviously if there is a sudden tsunami, you cannot really do anything except but better prediction. But sometimes most of these nature produces crisis, which is exacerbated by either omission or commission of certain actions by human, which modifies it to the disaster situation. And it is a very famous saying in Japan especially, which is not the earthquake, again I'm repeating, it's not the earthquake which kills it, but the buildings which kill. Let's say you're in an empty ground and earthquake happens, unless it is a Richter scale 9.5 where literally earth starts shaking and it goes, you might get killed. Otherwise in 5 6 7 I don't think much will happen to you. But in case you're dwelling in a building on top floor of 18th, and which is not, again I'm repeating, which is not earthquake resistant, you can be killed. Let's say there is X intensity of earthquake which happens in Japan, okay, but since it has advanced infrastructure, Japan is a very commonly prone to earthquakes, because it lies on the something called as ring of fire. Because of the advanced infrastructure and where houses are earthquake resistant, it will result in minimal disruption. Similar, if some X intensity occurs in, let's say, overpopulated town of Southeast Asia, let's say somewhere in Bangladesh or some part of India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Pakistan, it can happen that for weeks there is no response. There are certain people which are just left on their own. It might happen and it can wreak havoc. So you have to understand that we have to be fully prepared for disaster at all times. So it can be easily said, this is very critical when you write your answers, the distinction between natural and man-made disaster is extremely superficial. There is no purely man-made disaster, there is no purely natural disaster. There is a considerable overlap between anthropological as well as natural factors. This is how you write your answers. Anyway, most disasters, again I'm telling you, most disasters results from either action or inaction of people. I've already told you this is called as act of commission, act of omission in law. It results because of degradation of environment. It because of developing and overpopulating urban center, plus unique vulnerable socio-economic structure, as I have already told you. These factors accelerate intensity, frequency of disasters, lead to heavy toll of human lives. ये सब पढ़ा चुका हूँ, but again to reinforce it, it's very critical, and it disrupt the functioning of the nation. This is extremely important. So what we do, it needs to avoid, it can be otherwise avoidable. Please understand, crisis can never be allowed to turn into disaster. It is avoidable by proper and timely response, by following an all hazards approach. What is all hazards approach? Dealing with all types, again I'm telling all types of emergencies and disasters. I have told you there are 5 groups and there are 31 types of disasters. So please read about them, it will really help you. All these which can impact on communities and the environment. And अगर बहुत माइनर वेरिएशन चाहिए, अगर आपको एपिडेमिक, फ्लड, ड्रॉट, अर्थक्वेक, साइक्लोन्स, सुनामीज, Most of them disasters can be dealt with same set of management arrangements. Please understand this. And it includes both natural as well as man-made hazards. This is the point. We do not need an entirely separate strategy for all of them. Some minor variations, obviously, but more or less the same set of management arrangements will work to mitigate the impact of most of the disasters. Now we have hazard profile of India. ये कब देखना, देखो एक तो ये ऐसे इन्फॉर्मेशन लिख दिया आपने को, ये मेंस में ऐसे लिख के आ गया, ठीक है. So hazard is a potential or existing condition. It is more or less vulnerability, but it is more on the intenser scale. And it may cause harm to people, damage to property as well as environment. So regions in India with their respective vulnerabilities. So there are 5 regions in India basically. Himalayan region में क्या हो सकता है, earthquake आ सकता है, landslides हो सकती है. Obviously mountain में और क्या होगा, mountain में cyclone तो नहीं आ सकता, and mountain cannot have tsunamis also. Alluvial plains, obviously every year we know that the region of Bihar, West Bengal, Eastern UP, it's Punjab, it every 2-3 years it shows floods. Even in Mumbai's urban centers we have seen massive flooding in 2006. Then there is peninsula. Peninsula is the most stable portion of because it's called as shield, something called as geological shield. It is the oldest developed portion in India. So it is one of the oldest portion because Himalayas and all, they are literally forming as we speak. Occasional earthquakes might happen because of the geotectonic movements which goes on, but it is the most stable portion. Now we have desert. Desert में क्या हो सकता है? What can possibly happen in desert? Obviously droughts leading to famines. And coastal zone, obviously cyclones will happen, storms, tsunamis, etc. There will be coastal zone. Now see, एक तो ऐसे आप लिख के आ गए मेंस में. This is the way you write the exam. I am impressed of the content but not of the presentation skills. So let's say I give you 5 out of 10. Same thing, write one line and write the second line, but do this. Now it might get you 7 out of 10, and these 2 marks, believe me, will make or mar your career. It is the matter of life and death. So this is how you make it. Reasons with respect to vulnerabilities. अगर ये art, if you master this art, then no one can stop you. You know the content, you know how to present it. No one, literally no one can stop you. So Himalayan regions can have earthquakes and landslides. Alluvial plains have floods. Peninsula have most stable portions. Occasional earthquakes. Desert have droughts, famines. Coastal zones have cyclones, storms and tsunamis. मजे की बात यह है, the matter of fact for fun is that, ladies and gentlemen from South, it will take less time to make this table rather than writing that content. यही तो मजे की बात है. You'll get more marks, you will get take less time, you'll be able to attempt all the questions. People come and ask me, how are you able to attempt 23, 24, 25 questions? Because you just get 7.5 minutes per question. In 180 minutes you are supposed to solve 25 questions. How is it possible? We are able to attempt only 15. This is the key. This is the secret which I am revealing right now. It's not much of a secret, but anyway, this is how you attempt. Make tables, make charts, make flow diagrams, and you will be able to attempt most of the question because it will save you lots and lots of time. This is from 26 January 2001, Bhuj disaster, and this is a building literally split into two. So we do not want such conditions to happen. So now we will talk about something called as disaster management cycle. What do you mean by disaster management cycle? So here we go. So you just put disaster management somewhere here. It is a good, ऐसे बनाओगे तो ज़्यादा नंबर मिल जाएंगे. Then एक ऐसे एरो बना देना, उस पर इधर लिख देना prevention. This is, I just made it, mitigation. Then you can make here preparedness. Then here you can write capacity building. So these are the things which I have already taught you, but this is how, just to make sure कि आपको, you know how to make these diagrams and flow charts. There you can write disaster happened, and then you can make another arrow something like this pointing to this. Then here सबसे पहले obviously you have to response is there. Then you will have assessment somewhere here, immediate response followed by assessment. Then you'll have immediate relief, and finally you will somewhere write reconstruction here, and you can write rehabilitation here. So this is as simple as that. This diagram is absolutely no new information in it, but it will fetch you very good marks. You can't even believe it. ऐसे लिख के आओ and you'll get good marks. Who is stopping you from making these diagrams? I don't know why you don't make it. So the content everyone knows, but these are the called as the presentation skills, you will make yourself more appearable, more marketable, and this is how you tell them that you are the better person suited for the job. Anyway, moving forward, so this is the hierarchy of how the disaster management is dealt in India. Obviously, the nodal agency is Ministry of Home Affairs. Then we have the National Disaster Management Authority. Then we have the State Disaster Management Authority, and then we have the District Disaster Management Authority. Here we have PM, here we have CM, here we have DM. As simple as that. District disaster management जो committee है, that is the most lowest one, which have local authorities under it, municipalities, Zilla Parishad, etc. Then there will be advisory committees, communities, local communities, village, etc., village panchayat, etc. State के अंदर भी similarly you will have state executive committee and we have advisory committee. Now comes the National Disaster Management Authority. It obviously has an advisory committee. Each and every one has an advisory committee under it, as you can see. And NDMA, which is under the chairmanship of Honorable Prime Minister. It has NIDM, that is National Institute of Disaster Management, and NDRF, that is National Disaster Response Force, which we will be dealing in the next video. And here we have the National Executive Committee. And you can see lots and lots of ministries are involved in this, so don't fret on it much. So this is the hierarchy of how disaster management is dealt in India. So now tackling disaster, also called as disaster management. This is disaster management. Now we will deal with disaster management. So basically जब प्रेशर पड़ेगा एग्जाम में, जब सब कुछ भूलने लग जाओगे, you'll start to forget everything under the pressure of examination. The situation becomes very 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 tense, and it totally depends on these 7 hours that you remember these sequence. Please remember these 7 hours. It does not have a Roman in it, unfortunately. But anyway, so we have first response, it is followed by rescue, it is followed by relief. These are the short term measures. 3 hours are short terms, 3 hours are short terms, and 4 hours are long terms. So the 3 hours are response, rescue, and relief, and it is followed by recovery, reconstruction, rehabilitation, and reintegration. Please again, I'll speak. Remember these 7 hours in sequence. These three can be repeated: response, relief, rescue. It can be like this, or it can be relief, response, rescue. But these are in the short terms. You cannot put these in this category. And finally, long term, we have recovery, reconstruction, rehabilitation, and reintegration. Now we have something called as comprehensive approach, and it is followed by, it is includes prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. For prevention, obviously you need better prediction measures, अच्छे prediction indicators होने चाहिए आपके पास. You need to have good warning systems, which is the need of the hour. Unfortunately, we do not have for earthquakes, for tsunamis, for most of the disasters. But for cyclones, we have very good warning systems and prediction systems. And purpose of warning, what is the purpose of warning? It has to be done at least some few days or few hours in advance. It is to persuade and enable people to take actions to increase their safety and reduce the impact of hazard, which can be either quick onset, example seen in case of cyclones or floods. It can be either slow onset in case of famine, or in case of man-made disasters like fires, explosion, chemical spills, etc. Now obviously there is a need of extensive coordination between the various departments. Why will it help? Because bringing not only government departments but between government as well as the community, it help in bringing together of organizations and resources. उसका pooling of resources हो जाएगा. तो pooling of resources, then you can utilize appropriately and with efficiency and effectiveness, giving equitable distribution. These are called as 3E: equity, efficiency, and effectiveness. And it can be done according to the requirement imposed by the threat of impact or the emergency. Then whenever disaster strikes, people tend to lose their mind, and it becomes very difficult for us to direct them or for anyone to direct them. So abiding by the SOPs, that is standard operating procedures, SOPs, is very important. Even as a doctor, we had a lot of SOPs: how to perform surgery, how to diagnose a patient, how to give medications, how to do treatment, how to develop prognosis of cancers and all. So abiding by SOPs is very critical. What are SOPs? They are set of directions which details what actions can be taken and how actions can be taken, when actions can be taken, by whom actions can be taken, and why these actions need to be taken, with extremely simple, precise instructions. This is extremely crucial. If you have good SOPs and if you abide by them, most of the crisis situation will never be turning into disaster. The C will not turn into D. This is how you write an essay. This is extremely important, how you present yourself. Then in short term, how do you go about disaster management? You first obviously you give response, which is actions taken in anticipation of or during or immediately after a disaster. ऐसा नहीं कि 10 दिन बाद ले रहे हो, उसके immediately after a disaster. And this is to ensure that effects are minimized and people affected are given absolutely immediate relief as well as support. Okay, it is followed by S&R operations. SRO is search and rescue operations, to minimize again loss of lives and including locating recovering victims to reuniting them with families, and in most of the cases they will be needing some minor to major medical interventions also. So do you provide basic medical assistance to them at that particular point? Now provision of immediate makeshift shelters, life support and human needs of persons affected by disaster, this is called as relief. So as I already told you, response, rescue and relief, they are the 3 R's of short terms. Please remember them if nothing else, and having SOPs obviously will help a lot. Then in long term, we need to have a coordinated process of supporting disaster affected communities. How will you do that? It will help in reconstruction of physical infrastructure, which is less important, but restoration of emotional, social, economic and physical well-being of people, which are the real resources of our country, the human resource, which is the real economy, the real wealth. That is more important. This is followed by their rehabilitation, including provision of medical and financial help, which is required obviously, and ultimately they are reintegrated into the society. So these are the 4 R's. Then the last slide for today is hazard analysis and mapping. This is like the way which areas are more prone, where can disaster strike, if it strikes what will happen. This is called as hazard analysis, which is extremely critical for effective disaster management. And again, the provision of logistics, which include like a range of operational activities including like supply, handling, transportation or distribution of materials. This is one thing. And finally, there is dire need to develop people centered approach. In short, it means people, their livelihood and welfare are the central concern. And the definition is, while considering disaster as hazardous event, whenever we talk about disasters and their occurrence, it should be viewed with the result of social, economic and environmental conditions and practices. And again I'm telling you, we need to utilize the knowledge of the community, the people, and how they are dealing with these disasters from time immemorial, integrate them with modern prediction and rehabilitation, technological as well as human intervention, and no crisis will turn into disaster. So I hope you like this video. So this is the YouTube channel Unacademy. This is the Facebook page. You can comment here on the post below and let me know if you like this. And if you want me to make another video, you can also tweet to me at my Twitter handle at Saini. Do spread the word and please help those who cannot afford coaching. And I'm extremely grateful that you keep watching these videos and encouraging me. Thank you for watching the video. Have an awesome day.